Eleanor lived alone in a modest cottage on the edge of town. At 78 years old, her days were quiet and predictable. Mornings were spent tending to her late husband's rose garden, afternoons with a book by the window, and evenings knitting by the fire. Yet her solitude often felt heavy. Her children had moved far away, and though they visited occasionally, the silence in her home was palpable. One brisk November morning, as Eleanor was preparing her tea, she heard a faint whimpering outside. Curious, she stepped onto her porch and was greeted by a shivering, rain-soaked Labrador mix. His fur was matted, his ribs visible beneath his coat, and his eyes, warm and pleading, met hers. She hesitated. Taking in a stray was no small task, but something about the dog's gaze tugged at her heart. "Well," she sighed, "you look like you could use a meal." She brought him inside, dried him off, and offered him a bowl of leftover soup. From that moment, he never left her side. Eleanor named him Rusty, inspired by the reddish tint in his fur. At first, Rusty was cautious, sleeping by the door as if expecting to be thrown out. But over time, he grew comfortable, finding his place beside Eleanor's armchair. She spoke to him as though he were an old friend, sharing memories of her late husband, her children, and even her dreams as a young woman. Rusty, in return, listened, his head resting on her lap, his tail thumping softly on the floor. Winter turned to spring, and Rusty's presence transformed Eleanor's life. She began taking him on walks through the village, where the neighbors noticed her renewed energy. "You seem brighter, Eleanor," Mrs. Cartwright from next door remarked one afternoon. Eleanor simply smiled, knowing it was Rusty who had brought back her spark. The two of them became inseparable. Whether she was pruning her roses or baking apple pies, Rusty was always close, his eyes filled with quiet devotion. One summer day, as they strolled by the creek near her home, Eleanor noticed Rusty acting strangely. He was sniffing the air, his ears alert. Moments later, he darted ahead and began barking furiously. Alarmed, Eleanor hurried after him and found him standing protectively over a young boy who had fallen into the water. The boy, no older than 6, was struggling against the current. Without hesitation, Rusty jumped in and guided the boy to safety. The child's parents, who had been searching frantically, arrived moments later, overwhelmed with gratitude. Rusty became a local hero, but Eleanor saw him as much more, a guardian angel in a furry coat. As the years passed, Rusty began to slow down. His once lively gait became a gentle shuffle, and his eyes, though still warm, grew clouded with age. Eleanor, too, felt the weight of time on her shoulders. Yet they faced the challenges together, their bond only deepening. On chilly evenings, they would sit by the fire, Eleanor stroking Rusty's fur while reminiscing about their adventures. "You've given me so much," she whispered to him one night. "I don't know how I ever got by without you." One autumn, Eleanor fell ill. The vibrant, independent woman Rusty had known became frail and bedridden. Rusty rarely left her side, curling up beside her bed as though keeping watch. One morning, as the sunlight streamed through the window, Eleanor reached out to touch Rusty's head. "You've been my greatest blessing," she murmured. With that, she drifted into a peaceful sleep. The village mourned Eleanor's passing, but Rusty's grief was immeasurable. For weeks, he would sit by her chair, his head resting on the cushion as if waiting for her return. The neighbors, moved by his loyalty, took turns caring for him, but none could replace the bond he had shared with Eleanor. Eventually, Rusty found a new home with a kind couple who had admired Eleanor and Rusty's connection. They gave him a warm bed and plenty of love, but he always carried a piece of Eleanor with him. In her honor, the village erected a bench in the park, engraved with the words, "In memory of Eleanor and Rusty, an extraordinary friendship." Rusty lived out his remaining years surrounded by kindness, his story inspiring everyone who heard it. To this day, locals share the tale of the widow and her loyal dog, a testament to how love and companionship can transform even the loneliest of lives.